guest with me today. I'm really excited about our show. We have a wonderful blend for you today. I'm going to start on my right with Eddy Walsh. Thank you for coming, Eddy.
Thank you for having me.
And Eddy is a filmmaker, and he's going to share about that today. And on my left, Indigo Moor.
Pleasure
Welcome.
to be here, yes.
Thanks for coming. Indigo came from Sacramento. Eddy lives in Ione with me. And then we have the lovely Amy Smith. Thank you for coming, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
From Angels Camp? That's right. And we're going to get started. I am going to share a little bit about Hine & Company Bookstore downstairs. And it's, I think both Amy and I were in there before we came in today. And I noticed some new big giant easy chairs in there too, which I took advantage of. Books and film and, oh my gosh, they have the new upstairs they're renovating for their murder mystery theater, Baker Street West, which everyone in town is looking forward to. And of course you meet Emily the cat when you first go in. She was on the table in the front. Book clubs meet there, writers' critique groups, just about everything. There was a gathering there when I left today. So be sure you go over and check their amazing new inventory. Their steampunk and theatrical clothing and props. Just pretty amazing. Wolf and Linda have really branched out. And oh yes, the books are stacked all over the place now. It's kind of cool. So as we get started here, I'm going to ask everybody to share first a little about, I think I'll start with Amy, about what you write and show your book and say what you'd like to share to begin with, and then we'll move on.
Well, my book that came out last summer is All Roads Lead to Austin, and it's a travel narrative. It's actually sort of literary travel memoir. There's a lot of genres mixed in together. I spent a year traveling in Latin America to learn Spanish and to do reading groups on Jane Austen, to meet people, to sort of see, okay, we're up here in North America, what about the South? I have since then been working on, I have a website where I'm writing more about travel, travel within the United States now, because I married one of the people who I met while I was doing this travel. And so now he's here, and we're doing this sort of thing in reverse. I spent my time learning about South America, and now he's up here learning about North America. He got here last April and has already been in 25 states.
Wow, what
So
a
we've done some
whirlwind.
nice road tripping around. So
And what does he think so far?
he likes it. It's big. It's interesting, different. For somebody from the outside, for them to recognize how big the differences are among the states is something that's kind of striking to people culturally. The gigantic differences between different states, California, East Coast, because we went to Pennsylvania and then around there.
And have you hit the Midwest too?
We have hit the Midwest. I have family in Nebraska, so we've spent time out there with them. And so what I've been doing on my website recently is exploring some of the things that have come up in the course of that travel and sharing travel posts.
Interesting. That's a fun job.
Well, that's not the day job.
That's not the day job, yes. Isn't that the truth? And what about you, Indigo?
I write in multi-genres. My two books of poetry are Taproot from Main Street Rag and Through the Stonecutter's Window from Northwestern University Press. I've had several short plays on stage, and I have a full-length stage play that's being turned into a film, so I'm currently working on a screenplay for that.
That's a wonderful experience.
It is. It's a wonderful, nerve-wracking, glorious experience, yes.
And most authors don't really usually get a say in that.
No, I was very surprised actually that they wanted to keep me on board to help convert it into a screenplay. I know one of the producers, and he knew that I was proficient in switching the genres, so he felt comfortable in keeping me on. And I've been trying to make the best of it by not getting in their way and doing exactly what they need, but still trying to make sure that I'm getting across in the screenplay exactly what I got across in the stage play.
And how different has that been for you?
It's not different for me in that I understood from the beginning that the language of dramatic action and the images of dramatic action are the difference between stage play and screenplay. But it has been different in that I'm normally the last person that understands what's going on. So they already know why something needs to change, and then they let me know that it needs to change, and then I'm playing catch up, trying to understand exactly what they want. So, and then giving it to them and hoping it's what they asked for.
Oh, that sounds exciting to me.
It's pretty exciting, yes.
Would you like to be asked to do that for your book?
I think that would be fabulous.
Yeah, so do I. And Ed, you have done some really interesting work locally here in a wonderful landmark, actually.
Definitely, yeah. In fact, the first real project that I did was a student film called Engagement to Murder. And the most fun part about that was we got to film at Preston Castle in Ione. Pretty much got free run of the castle with supervision from the foundation, of course, but just a really, really fun experience. Beautiful structure there. And like I said, getting that, intimate, closeness to the castle, just being able to go wherever you want and not being restricted by a tour was a blast.
So you didn't have a guide with you or alone?
We had a member of the Castle Foundation supervising us, but
Okay.
there was no, okay, now we have to go here, now we have to go there. Just, they were telling us don't go here, for safety reasons, but other than that, just such a blast.
I love the architecture of that building, and the outside has survived better than the inside. And I was asking you before we started, you shot both outside and inside.
Correct.
During the
yeah.
day?
During the day, yeah.
And how long did that take to finish your project?
It was the better part of a day. We had to go back to get some pickups the next day, but
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so.
And I know they showed the film at Clark's Corner.
Yeah, they showed it at Clark's Corner, and then recently there was a fundraiser at the castle where they showed 3 castle films, including Engagement to Murder. So, which is fun. It's always fun to see.
Yeah. Are they going to show it again?
I don't know if the Castle Foundation is. I know some of the people in town have asked about it, so maybe, possibly.
Yeah. There's a lot of us that have been asking about it. I was out of town, so I missed it.
Oh,
and I
no.
really wanted to see it. Do you have any plans into what you want to go to from there? What you like to work on?
Ultimately my dream would be to go into some kind of, narrative filmmaking. Right now I'm doing some nonfiction stuff, just to try to get my bearings, but that's ultimately what I'd like to be able to do. So it's a hard business to get into, as I'm sure you're learning.
Oh, certainly, yes, yes.
So but yeah, that would be my dream. So.
Are you just going to stick with the filming end of it, or have you ever thought about writing your own script?
I'd love to get into writing, and I think one of the cool things about independent filmmaking and the digital filmmaking is I think you can have much more control. If you have a studio, like you said, you don't always have control if you're a writer. So
Well, we know that. Yeah, a lot of us dream about that filmmaking aspect.
Right,
And you
right.
have that creative, once you get behind the lens there. I'm just curious. I did a photography day. You were saying earlier there's a day they open up.
right.
What was your favorite part of the castle to film?
My favorite thing was just the fact, they don't have a lot of electricity in there, and there's this beautiful light play through the windows, and I wouldn't say there was one specific room, but there's a lot of beautiful light play through the windows if you're photographing it. So and that's the part that I love. It didn't matter that they didn't have electricity to light it, because the natural light was just gorgeous inside. So.
And did you film a lot down in the basement, where I know they do wine tasting now, don't they?
There was a little bit in the basement. In fact, that's where a major part of the film takes place. So it's just really fun down there.
Can you just describe it a little to us, the film?
It's basically a 1930s murder mystery, kind of spoofing that genre a little bit. Definitely try the love and the intrigue and what's going on. Hopefully the audience doesn't know until the end. But it was the first project, so I don't know how it went. But,
Well, there's still a demand for it, so word
Yeah.
got around. That's
Yeah.
pretty good, huh?
But what was fun about that is, a lot of the older films, there's not as much complexity with the way that it was photographed. So I think we were able to get away with a little bit more simplistic filming, and a lot more, beautiful shots, that we tried to get, so.
I would love that for my first novel. Just, I go and scope out the lake, and I try and find where I think because my story has 2 cabins that connect with a path on the water, and I grew up on the mountain, not on the water. So I go and scout, trying to help them before it even starts, Oh, I can find that spot. Because then you worry, I know yours is going to film, and I would love to see yours go to film. What if, there's always for the author, what if it doesn't end up being what I really saw myself?
Yeah.
So I think it's great you're having this tremendous say.
Yes. It is wonderful to be a part of it, but one of the things I learned coming from And when I was working on my master's, it's one of the things I wanted to work on is what was the mindset that had to change when you're going from singular arts like poetry and fiction to collaborative arts like stage and screen. And you have to leave so much room for creativity for the directors, the producers, the actors, that sometimes it may not be exactly what you intended it to be. But to be a part of that process, you have to be okay with sometimes seeing it differently than you expected.
Which is generally the case.
Yes, but sometimes it can be pleasantly surprising.
But like you, I think that's a wonderful surprise. I would love to be called. Well, before we leave, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back. And actually, Amy had some excellent questions for us to discuss in the nonfiction genre, which really involves all of us. And so I am hoping that you will come back and join us. We're going to get into a little, why don't you tell them real quick? You have a few seconds.
Just the question that people debate about if it's nonfiction, creative nonfiction, how creative can it be before it stops being nonfiction? Basically, where's the line?
And that's a real big debate, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Well, come back, join us, Amy, Indigo, Eddy, and I, and we look forward to sharing what we think about that. And you can tell us what you think about it if you get back to me later. Thanks a lot.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. Network TSPN, and now back to authors, writers, books, and beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to authors, writers, books, and beyond.
Welcome back. Glad to have you join us. We're going to share our discussion about nonfiction, but first, I'd like everybody, starting with Amy, just to share a little bit of your background.
As in, well, where I'm from?
Where are you from?
From Pennsylvania originally. Have been in California since 1999. I came out here for a job. I teach at the University of the Pacific. So I teach creative writing, professional writing, and literature courses. And I lived in Stockton for years, and now I've moved up into the foothills. I'm from a very hilly part of Pennsylvania, and Stockton is very flat. And so now I'm up here, and it's like, the hills, this is good.
Yeah, the hills are beautiful, too.
It's lovely.
And Indigo?
I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in California since '95 with a brief hiatus in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Been working at Intel for, it seems like, forever now, which is my day job, but I teach at our conferences, residencies, any visiting professor jobs that I can get.
Oh, okay, nice. And Eddy?
Born and raised in Amador County, local guy. So, lived here for about 33 years. And day job would be at the local credit union, so do that by day, and
That's how I know Eddy.
get to let loose with the creative stuff when I get to do filming. So
Yeah, you gotta go that creative flow. Okay, well, we're gonna, and I'm a transplant here. And if you haven't heard me before, I'm a native Sacramentan, born Mercy General downtown, transplanted to England when my husband was military for 3 years, and then Morgan Hill, and then Ione. So I really want to get on your question there about the creative nonfiction, and you were talking about the author that had the very questionable book that had a lot of discussion for a number of years, and he's since had another one published. And he was on Oprah.
So James Frey.
Yeah, yes. Where did you want to start that discussion?
Well, it's come up when I teach the creative nonfiction class that I do, and in a workshop that I just did at the Moke Hill conference.
Gold Rush.
Where people are very interested in the question of like, okay, how much freedom do I have? It's creative, but it's supposed to be nonfiction, so where's, can I make things up to make it more interesting? And that's certainly what Frey did in A Million Little Pieces. Apparently, what I heard is that what I had read is that he originally wrote it as a novel because he took so much license with the things that happened, couldn't sell it, and finally thought, nonfiction is a little easier to sell. Maybe if I market it as nonfiction, somebody snapped it up. It's a really well-written book. But if you have a book that is meaningful to people because you're talking about recovery from addiction, and they find out you're making things up, that's really, it's
Loss of
it
integrity.
shakes people's faith in
Yeah.
you as a writer when you're saying that it's true.
I'm curious, what was your students' feedback on that?
Most of them felt very outraged. I mean,
Wow.
like there's a few people inevitably who'll say, well, you can fudge things a little, but the vast majority of them say, I don't want to read something if a person's making it up unless they warn me in advance, hey, this is a novel. It's like, fine. Sometimes fiction actually is more truthful in certain ways, emotionally speaking, but if you're going to tell a story about recovering from addiction and say, this is my story, don't make it up.
It should be your story.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the students. What about you? What do you think of that?
Well, obviously, I deal mostly in fiction, and for me, it's a case of verisimilitude. And Desiree Cooper on NPR once said that she believes in the truth, but sometimes to get at that truth, she has to fictionalize the events. So my question would be that some people were reading the book and the recovery from addiction, and they were getting a certain message from it. Did it make a difference if it was fiction? Wasn't the message still the same?
No, because the message is that I actually survived this. And if that's the message and he didn't, then it does make a difference to people. So, I mean, you can read a novel about recovery.
Yes.
It's sort of like truth in packaging. You know, if you read a novel, you can still take a lot of strength from that story, but knowing it's a story.
Yes.
But if a person says, this is me, this is the path I took, and this is how I recovered, and in fact, that's not actually what happened.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't lie about everything.
No,
But he
parts of it.
apparently was not in jail as long as he said he was. He didn't have dental surgery with no Novocaine. I'm afraid at this point I'm not 100%, I don't remember all the details that he'd actually made up, but he made up significant chunks. So, yeah, I think the question is sort of going into it, do you know that the person is using fiction to convey a message?
Yes.
Or
yes.
are they just lying?
Well, they say in fiction we lie to tell the truth. And I started in the nonfiction genre. For 10 years I wrote in nonfiction. And you really have to research your facts if you're presenting yourself to me as nonfiction and have it accurate. I was really a stickler for my sources. And so if I was writing something like that where I'm the main source, it's a matter of personal integrity. I know all authors, there's a lot of authors that are really desperately want to be published out there. That was his debut novel, wasn't it? Yeah, his first book. And so it comes down to integrity, just like when you're
Yes.
filming. Where am I going to draw the line for me of what's morally right and morally wrong? And then I don't think he took into consideration his audience. Because to me, younger kids, I would almost think they would be more accepting than older adults. I'm actually relieved to hear they were enraged.
Yeah, no, we talked about it. Another example of The Angel at the Fence. If you've heard about this story, it's a man who survived the Holocaust in Schleiben. It was a part of Buchenwald, and he survived. And then he told this story about how a young girl would come and bring him food. And then later they met after the war, and he married her and found out she was the woman who'd been bringing him food. So he got $25 million advance
Wow.
for, they would have sold the film rights, and then they discovered, in fact, it didn't happen.
At all.
So you have enough people already denying that the Holocaust happened.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
help.
And it's really bad if a Holocaust survivor says this happened to me, and then they prove that it didn't, and he admitted it. And so people feel really betrayed.
Yes, yes.
And he was an actual Holocaust
He
survivor.
was a Holocaust survivor. It's just that he didn't, there was no girl bringing him food. This was
Right.
not the woman he later married. And so that kind of takes the heart out of the love
That
story.
sort of
part
does
it.
a
I mean,
little
it's very, It's
bit.
very nice that he met someone later and married her, but it's not the same thing.
And technically, that couldn't even be creative nonfiction, couldn't it? Could it? Because the events weren't true.
No. No. Yeah, because it's really hard to capture, especially, so for instance, this book, I did not walk around with a tape recorder all the time. So what I did is in the introduction I said, at times I've had to recreate some dialogue, and at times I've had to combine things in the conversations that I had about the books with people, which were recorded. But basically for me the issue is like tell people up front what you're doing.
Yes.
So sometimes these things conflate a little bit, or sometimes I did this, or here's when I created some dialogue. So it's again, for me it's sort of labeling.
I think it all boils down to personal integrity. The bottom line is when we present something to a publisher, New York, they have their own legal teams, but they're trusting us as the author, as an individual, that we are telling them the truth.
Yes.
And I know there's change that occurs when it goes from a book to film. A lot of times an author might feel it's not recognizable, but there's that creative process too, which you talk about. I took your class at Moat Hill, and I think the upfront honesty is crucial. I would feel betrayed. I didn't read his book because of that. You know, one friend said, "Oh, how could you not? It's such a controversy." I said, "I have no trust in him whatsoever to start off." And when my readers that critique my novel have to have a degree of trust in me as the writer to believe my characters, so why would I pick it up and even start it? Where other people were attracted to it for that reason. And one author recently told me, "And you did hear he already sold another book." You know, and she's still trying to get her first novel out. So I think within the industry, there's a mutual, I think, respect and appreciation for being upfront, as you say. If you're going to do it a certain way, it's real easy to lay it out there. He could have laid it out there too.
And my father always used to say, well, you can't always let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Okay.
Which to me was the warning, this didn't all necessarily happen.
Yes.
So, I don't know, I guess that's all I ask. Some kind of...
I know I took a blend of, people always ask me, because my children's books are loosely patterned, they're lies, they're fiction.
Yes.
Sisters don't allow me, I say this all the time, to tell the truth about being children in the 50s and 60s at Lake Tahoe. I have to lie to tell the truth, you know, basically. So they assumed that the novels were the same thing because they take place at Tahoe also. And I have a Nana character in there. I choose to call Grandmother Nana, but the truth is that main protagonist is a composite of totally fictionalized character I drew and just put her together and made her up in a journal. And then people I'd see on a bus or a voice I'd hear here and there, and I'd jot down. It's partly my imagination, and it's not all centered on one person. It's not her story.
Yes. And you're saying that almost apologetically, though. And to me, it's just a different audience. It's not as if it needs to be completely, yes, in that sense, yes.
That's true. I would have loved to have told true stories about us as kids in those books. That would have been nonfiction, and that's how I would have presented it. Even my grandmother, when I gave her the first one as an essay for her 90th birthday, and she said, I don't remember this happening. And I said, because it did.
Because it didn't happen, yes.
Yeah, that's a good, she goes, oh, good, because, you know, and she had a perfect mind till she turned 100. You know, she had 100 with I want to be like that. So I think it's, you know, I think the fact that it's still this debatable, that book came out a while ago. It still stirs amongst writers. It comes up at almost every conference I go to. It stirs up emotion within the creative field and in the audience we're writing for. And I wonder why. Why is that so powerful?
Well, I think it's like you were both saying, there's expectations inherent in the genre. And if those expectations aren't held to by the author, it's going to ring false with everyone.
And then I think there is betrayal, a sense of betrayal. Even with film, you know, like you were saying how you like capturing the light, that's a natural beauty rather than if you don't have to create an artificial one. I personally would rather see the natural beauty. So we're going to take a break, come back and join us. We'll be talking about something else. I'm not going to tell you, just we'll be here waiting for you, and I'm so glad you came and spent the half of the show with us. We'll see you when we come back. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. You're watching your local television network, TSPN, and now back to authors, writers, books, and beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to authors, writers, books, and beyond.
Hey, welcome. Welcome back to this beginning of the second part of the show, and we're going to talk a little bit more about screenwriting, and gosh, I find that a fascinating aspect. I have in my head mapped out what I'd like to see, and hope they don't take out my, writers, remember this, Ed, okay? We are so particular about the words we choose. We spend a lot of time finding the right word. And a lot of times I'll go back, in a rough draft, I just get it all out, get the creative flow out. But when you go back, the word sets the tone. The words set the tone. Poetry too, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would just be crushed to see some of those wonderful words. But from the class I took from you at McCollum Hill, that's exactly what.
Absolutely. You
is
have to
ahead.
get used to the fact that I think I mentioned before that, the stage writing and the poetry and the fiction, it's the language. But when you get to the screen, it's the images. And as many images as you can use to get across what those words got across, you're going to substitute it every time. And the reason being is simple. We were talking about nonfiction and how you have to tell the truth. It's because of the audience. When they come to the theater, they want the images to set the mood. If they wanted to see the language set in the mood, they go see a stage play.
Yeah, and that's a big difference.
It's a huge difference, yes.
Yeah, and I think I like both. I like to go to, I grew up going to the music circus in Sacramento. Summer stock, mostly musicals, but the live performance is different every time. I think it was this past summer, the one before, my older sister and I go, and I had seen Oklahoma there as a kid. And I think it was not the lady from, she played in it with her, the lady that played the young girl in it originally played the mother. This time, not Florence Henderson. It's the other blonde I'm thinking of. And her son was in it. She shared a really neat fact that she was pregnant with him and they had to hide the pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
And then this time he played the male romantic lead role.
Wow.
It was really just an amazing, having seen it before, Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name. It's not Florence Henderson. But the lady that was in the Partridge Family.
Shirley Jones.
Shirley
It was
Jones,
Shirley
yes.
Jones, talented woman.
From Pennsylvania.
Yes. And just, the difference in seeing her as a young and old character was, she was beautiful in both. I had to wonder, for me, as a writer, I leaned over to Sean, my sister, at one point and said, do you think she's, thinking, I used to be that one there? Because the actress that played her previous role was phenomenal. And then the difference between going to stage plays, to Broadway, and then what you were doing at the Castle, which to me, Ed, you were preserving history there. And I think that's important too.
Yeah. I think especially, like you were saying with writing, when you're a writer, your words are sacrosanct. You spend so much time. And I almost think of filming as almost an abstract art, because so much of that has to be conveyed visually. Everything that you do with lighting and angles and staging the actors and everything can convey the ideas that you would normally have to do with words. And so I personally think that it would be aggravating and scary being a writer presenting your this creative thing, this child that you've had, with your words, to the filmmakers, because it can go through such a changing process. And sometimes it has to. You can't tell the story the same way. It's a totally different way of telling a story.
Absolutely, and that's what the class that I was teaching. It's I'm trying to get the poetry writers and fiction writers to understand the way that they have to change their thinking if they're going to write for the stage and the screen. That much of what they put in, they have to not necessarily take out, but leave room for the creative input for the directors and the actors, because it is a collaborative effort at this point.
Right.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm just thinking about the other night my husband and I watched The Battle of the Sexes, a silent film by D.W. Griffith. And silent film would be a really good way to try to teach people you really don't need as many words as you think you do.
Wow.
To watch somebody who tells a story with, a title occasionally flashing by, but the rest of it's happening, and you don't need the words to know what's happening. So have you like studied silent film much with that kind of idea in mind?
Just watching them, and every time, even as a kid growing up, when I would watch a movie, I would kind of be analyzing it. So definitely, and and that's why just as in stage, a lot of the gestures have to be exaggerated and things like that,
Yes.
so that you get it across. And because you can't hear anything that they're saying, so many of the facial expressions and movements have to be exaggerated. But certainly, one of the things that I thought was so fun in learning about filmmaking is just the fact that just the way you light a scene or just the way you angle the camera can have an effect on what the audience is perceiving. So whereas you have the liberty when you're writing the book of using the beautiful language to do that. So
That's the title. I use the word language in my title. What does that say about me? There isn't a psychologist here, right? I was thinking too, wasn't there recently in the last year or two in Hollywood a silent film that won the Academy?
Yes, The Artist.
The Artist.
yeah.
Just the clips I saw, I never got to go see it. I thought it was phenomenal, what they showed. I've seen 3 different clips.
Oh yeah, no, that was a phenomenal movie. I thought. I don't know if you guys had a chance to
I
see
haven't
it.
seen it.
Yeah. So, well, it was kind of fun. I mean, it's basically, the main actor. I think they were trying to make like Gene Kelly.
Okay.
Which of course, Singing in the Rain is about that transition from talking or from silent to talking. So, but yeah, no, very very good movie. So.
I love Gene Kelly too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to make a point to see it. And have you thought of the title of that movie we were talking about before?
I have not, no,
See,
but it will come to me, yes.
I don't know why I can't remember it. I mentioned Squaw Valley, one of my favorite screen writers up there, Camille Thomason. One year she showed 10 clips, and they were the turning point in each film. And oh my goodness, I've mentioned it on here before. And I cannot remember, I took 2 friends that year, and none of us can remember the title of the one. The others, Babette's Feast and 3 Kings. They were very powerful films. And the silent film was the Joan of Arc. The original Joan of Arc. Have you ever seen that one? That's a powerful film. And most of the cast later committed suicide at different intervals.
Oh wow.
Just an odd fact about it. But that was the one that just, on a very different level, blew me out of the water. The power in the acting in that, in the looks and the angles and the turns. And then the one I can't remember the name for, which is total opposite.
Yes,
It is a
yes.
complete opposite type of movie. And I think that contrast, the creativity. We all have a different creative flow here and use it differently. Yours complements our writing. And you're getting to experience an unusual blend for both.
Yes, but I don't think it should be that unusual. I think it's basically changing how you're going to think as you're going to be an artist. I do believe that all writers can learn it.
So you think a lot of authors could learn?
They could, but like everything else, there's the amount of time we have is finite.
That's
How
so
much
true.
energy do you want to put in learning that next genre?
Yeah, and then do we stay in the same genre? Some people are in several, like you, right, in more than one genre. One thing I like about what Antoinette May offers up at McCollum Hill is the variety she brings.
Yes.
We are kind of up in the hills here, a little away from, the main, even the capital city, and she has brought a wide variety, I think, because I've taken your classes twice, and there was a break in between.
So, yes.
There was a break in between.
Yes, and she brings, like you said, different people in from different genres, journalists, travel writers, everything.
And she calls it a boutique conference. She intentionally keeps it small, so those of us that are there get the real intensity. And I greatly appreciate that. Not that the bigger conferences don't offer as much, but there's an intimacy to that, and I think an opportunity afforded that sometimes in the bigger scope of things is lost. What do you think?
A chance to actually have conversations with people, not just the sort of, hi, nice to meet you, and they're out there doing their workshop, but you don't get a chance to speak with them later. So, no, I've been, 2 years now. The first year I went, and this year I was invited to do one of the workshops. And both years, I'll definitely be back next year again.
Yeah, I think, and several people made suggestions. This year was the first year they had children's. I taught it for the first time, And people have been asking for things for screen and play. And she's very good about considering what the need is, the need in the community, although people come from far outside the community for it. But it offers a lot that we would be lacking. You're from here. How much has it changed?
Oh, just in Amador County? Oh, I'd say since I was a kid, a great deal. Yeah, I mean, I think it's still definitely pretty rural, but
Yes, our traffic is like 5 or 6 cars. That's not too bad in Ione. Well, I'd like to share before we break, real quick. This is a book I read for book club. Actually, this isn't book club. I just lied to you. This is one I'm reviewing, Mistaken by a debut author, Karen Barnett. And really good, 1920s, Prohibition. I was very pleased. Her first chapter really wowed me. And a lot of times if you don't get past that, it's you don't go on. But I was very pleased with her writing, and it was continual the whole way through. It's a book I recommend. I like to recommend one once in a while. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you want. And this is kind of a new era, I think, because of the Downton Abbey. People are going back to the 1920s here in America, too. So just something to think about. Her publisher is Abingdon. So that's CBA Market, but you can find it again on Amazon. So welcome, come back again. Don't leave us. I'd like to encourage you to stay a little more to hear from the wonderful guests. Actually, you're going to be hearing more from them when we come back. So take a break, and we'll see you when you come back. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. You're watching your local television network, TSPN, and now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond. This program also streams live on the web at tspntv.com and can be watched on demand at tspntv.com or TSPN TV's YouTube channel. And now back to Authors, Writers, Books, and Beyond.
Welcome back, and Ed has a question for Amy.
Amy, you were talking earlier that you've been doing a lot of traveling in the United States and abroad. I'd love to hear, what's been your most memorable experience with that?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Well, I guess just recently, the travel with my husband here has been really interesting because I've done a lot of traveling in other countries. One of my brothers lives in Cairo, so I followed him there, and he lived in South Africa, so I followed him there, and he lived in Italy, and I followed him there. So having family to stay with is helpful. But it's been really interesting to see the United States from somebody else's perspective. So to travel, to go on a road trip. I've been in most of the states. I think I'm missing about 6. But to travel with my husband and see places and to see his surprise at different things and the kind of, Americans, we're kind of nuts in many ways. And we're just even, we were talking about the Warner Brother cartoons, how violent those things are. Yay, this is so funny.
But I like the frog, like you said.
But it's for him seeing how different every state is from the others, because there's this notion that it's the United States. I had the same idea about South America. I thought, they all speak Spanish. I think maybe Brazil, they speak Portuguese, but they all speak Spanish. They must be the same. Well, they're very much not the same. So it's like telling a Texan that, Texas, California, same thing. So, New York, Pennsylvania. And so for him to see like every state, every time we would cross a line, welcome to Nebraska, the good life, and every state's got its slogan, and there's, we've got flags and because that's not something that's really apparent to people from outside of the United States.
Very, very cool.
An individual flavor,
Oh,
almost
Yes,
like mini
definitely.
nations within, What about you? I'm just curious, since you film, what would be your favorite project? Dream project?
Up to this point, to me, with every project, you learn something new, and that's the funnest thing. And I think everyone has taken the whole group on all kinds of fun adventures. Last year, the last narrative that I did was in Jackson last summer, and to me, the funnest part was getting to shut down Main Street. That was just, for a student film production to be able to do that. I didn't even know there was an Amador County Film Commissioner. And so getting that all worked out and, having a few hours where there was no one driving through Main Street except for us, it was ours. that was really, really fun.
Are you going to be participating at all when they do any of the drama up there? Are you going to film any of that?
The drama run?
Next door at Hine Company when they do the Murder Mystery Theater?
You know, I hadn't even considered it, but I mean, I'm always up for new experiences and getting involved. So definitely, I've been pretty, this year I've been accumulating a lot of the tech that you need to do that. So I'm like, now I'm raring to go.
Oh, good.
So,
We'll
yeah.
have to put the word out. What about you? I'm just curious. You're moving into your big project, probably the biggest one of your life.
I imagine it is, yes. I hope that I continue to be involved. I'd like to be, but I try to keep writing. There are other projects that I'm working on. So that's one that I'm looking forward to. I'd like for them to start filming because I recognize that, until the cameras start rolling, there's no film, no matter what the screenplay looks like. But I'm working on my novel, still have stage plays in the work. The screenplays, is never a shortage of things to write about. So, yeah, anything that comes my way.
Yeah, and it's interesting when it kind of comes our way, kind of suddenly, unexpected.
Yeah, you
Yours
just got to
was
be
unexpected.
ready.
Yeah, we always have to be ready.
It was a phone call, yeah. Say, hey, that stage play that you were working on, because Matthew Quinn Martin, who is an actor and producer, he does a little bit of everything. When I was first learning to write stage plays, he had worked with me for a while, and he had seen Live at the Excelsior, the play, and he remembered it, even for his film company, thought, we'd really like to make this into a film, and I wasn't quite sure how serious he was, but I guess he was, yes.
Good thing, too, because
Yes.
we'll all go, right?
No, definitely.
Well, I'm curious, too, about another thing. In this area, and you've lived in Sacramento, how long did you say?
I got to Sacramento in '97, and I spent a little time in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but I've been here
That would have been
ever
hard for
since.
me to leave.
Yes, it was, yes.
I actually started out that direction in my youth, hitchhiking. I got as far as Reno, Nevada. But I've flown through that airport. That is one of my lifelong dreams, to get there, and maybe I'd write a story there. Do you have a favorite location you would like to shoot somewhere else?
Oh God! I mean, where wouldn't I want to shoot? I mean, that's why I envy you with the traveling, because I mean, they're probably it's funny. I talk about like at work, I want to go here, I want to go there, and people are like, why would you want to go there? I'm like, why wouldn't you want to go there?
Yes.
Someplace new.
Yeah, it's just I'd want to go anywhere that I have the chance to go. I'd want to go. So definitely.
What about you, travel? Oh, you Indigo.
Oh, me?
It's
yes.
you, yes.
I would love to. There are so many places I'd love to go. I've been learning Portuguese, and I have a sabbatical coming at Intel. I'm thinking of going to Brazil next year.
Wow.
And I'd actually started learning it because I wanted to go to Portugal, to Lisbon, for research for the next book of poetry that I'm working on. But then I fell in love with Brazilian Portuguese, and so now I've sort of gravitated towards there. So, yeah, I would love to travel. There's so many places I'd love to go, and I realize it would fuel the creativity. I think we're all in that boat, that the more we travel, the more input we take in, the more delicious things we feed our mind, the more that we're able to put that on a page or on film. Yes.
I think I was young when we were in England, newlywed, so probably 22, 23, 24, 25. And I wrote song lyrics first song lyrics, and then poetry. And oh my gosh, we were out, not in London, near the Queen's Summer Home in Sandringham in the country in Norfolk. You want to talk about inspiring. Just the quaint cottages and with their thatch roofs. And one of my favorite scenes, and as a photographer, the Brits take their tea. They're out on their little bicycles with their wicker basket with a no-speed bike, and they have their thermos, and they just go off the side of the road, and if the Queen drove by, everything stopped. They loved seeing her go by, and the fox hunts, and I would not experience that here. And it was like going back 100 years in time. And the inspiration was more the song lyrics and the poetry. And I go back and read it, and I was a different person then, experiencing something different.
Yes.
I would love to go to Italy. Was that a favorite place of
It's
yours?
a wonderful place to live. My brother lived there for a year. I lived in Prague, and he lived in Bologna. And so I went and traveled and spent time there. Yeah, Italian, my experience of it was in Bologna and the other cities, is that people are just very vibrant, and there's really lively street life.
Yeah.
So it's not like people run to the store, grab something, and run home. There's this, you're out on the street, and you're dressed nicely, and you're enjoying yourself, you're looking at other people. Actually, Argentina, where my husband is from, has a lot of Italian influence in their culture. And there's the same kind of feel in Buenos Aires, that kind of like wonderful street life.
It's excitement,
Yeah.
actually, not like I own. Our street fills up, doesn't it? I found some things are open till 9 now.
Right. I think Clark's is.
Yeah, Clark's, and thank goodness for Clark's. But I think, see, that's a whole book
Yeah,
within
and every city
itself.
is so different from every other city in Italy. They're very different culturally. They were city-states. They were tiny little cities with walls around them, for centuries.
I know my mom is near the end of her life here, and she has Alzheimer's, so she's lost her memory. Always wanted to go back to her homeland, Sicily, to Piana de Greci, which then became Piana de Albanesi, village of the Greeks or village of the Albanians. And the memory is important too. And I think what we do is we're preserving history and memory, where our nation is having a memory issue.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tragedy. And so in our writing and recording, and I would look through your camera and see something different than you. We would all sit together at a writing workshop and write something different. I love the individuality of our giftedness, and I don't know, do you also talk to yourself?
I don't
Be
know if there's-
honest,
Yeah,
okay?
of course we do. I don't know if there's a writer who doesn't talk to themselves, and
And you talk to your characters.
all the time. Yes, I think unless you're that intimate with your characters, and most likely you don't know them well enough to write them. So
And they talk back to you, right?
yes, they should.
And they get
yes.
bossy.
Yes, and at some point they should start writing themselves.
That's right. And I think mine do sometimes. I kind of like that part, I don't know if you have pets, but I steal my daughter's dogs during the day, the black lab and the Rottie Shepherd, and they sit on the side of me, and I give them parts. And sometimes it's like they cock their heads, and sometimes they get into it. Sometimes I think a lot of people write about animals, dog lovers, etc. Like the dog touring through Argentina. I'm surprised that book isn't out. Seriously, Marley and Me was a big hit. And he actually he was a journalist, and basically I think what you'd call it, he wrote was slice of life columns that he turned into a book that are now children's books. And now there's Bad Dogs Have More Fun. You're kind of like us, we can have more fun. Before I go, I want to thank you. I know we're getting ready to wind down. I wish you guys could stay for another hour. Very fascinating and a lot of food for thought with the nonfiction integrity. We're on the line in everything we do. We put ourselves on the line. And I think we give the best we have to give. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
I know after one of our previous shows, the owner of Clark's Corner wanted to contact Amy to teach a class back in the banquet room there.
That'd be exciting.
Yes, it would be. There's a lot of people I own that would go.
Okay.
So I'm going to show, this is a CD. This is called Untold. The artist is Rachel Wagner. If you go to my website, www.kathyboydfellure.com, her music's in a little tab called Soundtrack, which is my hope for my book. But the tone is very beautiful. So music is part of this too, I think. I play music when I write. So thank you again. We're winding down. We only have a few seconds. I'm supposed to say goodbye.
Thank you.
But you guys come back. Again, Amy's been back. How should I put this? One word real quick that describes your creativity. Goodbye. Goodbye. Take all the fun out of it.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.